Alright, welcome. If you're new to the channel, my name is Elliott with Rickety Ski Reviews, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. I saw some content over the weekend. It was this guy who did a tier list for the Western Mountains, and it was very insightful. It's this guy that drives around in a van and went to different mountains, and so he kind of did a tier list of all of the different mountains in the West Coast. What was really interesting, if you looked at his map, it was like Utah, Oregon, British Columbia, California, and what's missing in the middle? Dude, the guy completely missed Idaho, which I'm kind of grateful for because, you know, we don't need things getting that busy around here. I was like, what does this guy have a warrant out for his arrest in the state of Idaho? He literally like went out of his way to completely avoid the state. So, I don't know. Mine is not as calculated. I did not go to all these ski areas in one year. I've just been to them throughout the year. But I'm going to give you my tier list. And as always, it's going to be a little bit sassier, but that's okay. Let's jump into it. Now, maybe there isn't as much build-up, but I'm just going to do it opposite. Who cares? I'm just going to give you guys number one. Number one, my favorite ski area and what I think is objectively the best ski area on the West Coast, number one goes to Snowbird. It's unmatched. In fact, that's what this guy gave for his number one, which is, you know, probably part of why I liked it. But Snowbird has the best snow. It has the best terrain. It's the best day of skiing I've ever had in my life. I've been skiing now for, oh my God, 27 years? No, 29 years? I've been skiing for almost 30 years now, and Snowbird has any day out of that entire time skiing beat. Snowbird gets the lightest, fluffiest powder. If it's a windy day, there's not as many people because they don't like the cold, and if you're an East Coast guy, you're like, all right. It's just kind of cold compared to really cold. Yeah, Snowbird has the best terrain, the best powder. You can run on these ridge lines. This quality of the snow is probably the best, just light and airy. I went one day and I was just kind of skiing on the ridge line and able to bop along, go down the ridge line, back over it. Best day of skiing I've ever had. I found all of the chairs and gondolas and everything worked really well. I was blown away. You can also ski a ton of vertical in a row. Excellent. Not a lot to say other than like you have to see it to really believe how good it is. So number one's pretty easy, pretty uncontroversial. From here, it gets a little spicier, okay? Number two on my list is something that I never hear people talk about it here, but I think the second best ski area that you could go to the West Coast is Sun Valley. Sun Valley is so underrated, and part of that is because it's so expensive. It's really, really expensive, but they have some of the nicest amenities leading up to it, which doesn't really matter to me too much because I just kind of get ready in my car and eat an old breakfast burrito for lunch. But Sun Valley has some of the best terrain. They've opened up a whole new wing of the mountain that just has this great kind of tree skiing. It's got great powder access. They get a ton of snow. As the name kind of says, it's sunny, so you get great conditions during the day. The groom runs, chef's kiss. It's like some of the best grooming, I think, you could argue, in North America. They have some of the most snowmaking in North America. It's always consistent, it's always good, and the mountain is just beautiful. There is such diverse runs that are accessible. You can do things like you can set up these beautiful lines. A lot of people don't talk about Sun Valley, and I get it because it's kind of known as this like ritzy, rich kind of area, and it totally deserves some of that. But if you look at the actual skiing, Sun Valley is very, very underrated, and in my opinion, one of the best, if not the second best ski area in North America. It's really, really good. All right, I told you it was gonna get spicy. There's a couple too that I didn't include. You know what, because those are some of my personal favorite mountains, and I don't need them to get busy, okay? So there's like two on this list that I didn't include. So if you know me personally and you're like, what? Why didn't you include these? Hey, keep it to yourself, all right? I've got small chair lines. I don't need long chair lines. All right, I told you it was gonna get spicy. Number three, we're gonna go Park City Mountain Resort. I think that when I skied there, I loved it. I loved the way it kind of integrated with the village and going right into the downtown area. But the skiing itself was really good. You know, it's not quite at Snowbird level, but it's still really good, really accessible. Nice variety of chairlifts. Like the chairlifts all access different types of terrain. I've noticed with some ski areas, it's like you'll have 3 chairlifts, but they all kind of access the same thing. All right, number 4 is Grouse Mountain in British Columbia. Now, Grouse is a little bit different than Whistler Blackcomb. I've skied at Whistler Blackcomb in the summer. I've skied there a little bit in the winter. But you know what? It gets so overcrowded, and it's so hard to access the area if you're not just staying in the village. I liked it a lot, but I actually like Grouse Mountain. It's more accessible via Vancouver. It's got great terrain, some of the best wood skiing I've ever seen, some of the best snow. It's kind of not as like, it doesn't have the accolades that Whistler does, but I think Grouse Mountain in British Columbia is one of the best ski areas that I've ever skied at. So again, Whistler has some good stuff. Whistler Blackcomb, if you're flying in and you really want to see it, go see it. But I don't think if you look at the actual skiing, I think the actual skiing is better at Grouse. Just my opinion, but that's what I put for number 4. Number 5 is Silver Mountain in Idaho. This is a hidden gem, and I was reluctant to even put it on the list because I don't need it getting busy. Silver Mountain is in northern Idaho. Again, this guy's list would have missed it because he apparently has a search warrant in Idaho or something. I don't know why he dodged Idaho so hard. But Silver Mountain has the longest, I believe, I could be wrong, I believe it has the longest running gondola in North America. Basically, the way that Silver Mountain is set up is you have these hotels and restaurants kind of down in the village where you park your car, and then you take a 20-25 minute gondola up to the ski area, and that's where everything is. That's where the chairlifts are, that's where the après-ski is, that's where all of the, lodge and restaurants are. That's where you kind of spend the day. So you don't have to worry about driving up and down a hill, finding parking. You park down in the village where there's plenty of parking, plenty of restaurants, and maybe you stay at the hotel there, and then you can walk from the hotel to the gondola and go straight up. And from there, the skiing's unreal. They have like ice skating there. They have all this amazing stuff, but the skiing alone is great, and just the atmosphere of not having to deal with a bunch of cars, having good skiing. It's up north enough that the snow is really fresh and crisp. I'm telling you, Silver Mountain is a hidden gem and one of my favorite ski areas, and that's why it's number 5. Next, coming in at number 6 is Steamboat in Colorado. Colorado, I guess, is kind of like my Idaho in this one. I find a lot of the Colorado mountains to be overhyped and kind of under-deliver. I went to A Basin, wasn't a big fan, but also that pass, I have friends that live in that area, and they spend 2 to 3 hours in the car because there's 4 mountains, a large city, and everyone's trying to go to those 4 mountains on one pass, on one road. And so the traffic gets crazy. You see the videos of the lift lines. I don't know, just not my thing. But Steamboat I like quite a lot. The skiing there is really good. It's not kind of stuck in that pass like the rest of them. It kind of has its own village. It's very similar to Sun Valley, how that's kind of set up. The only thing I didn't like about Steamboat is that like the lodging and stuff is a little weird. Like all of the hotels and the condos and everything, it just looks like there's a mall crawling up the side of a mountain. It's really bizarre. But once you get out of that kind of cluster, the skiing is really good in Steamboat. That's some of my favorite powder skiing. It's some of my favorite wood skiing, and it's got a nice variety of terrain. And it's really, really beginner friendly. So I don't know, that's my number 6. I think Steamboat would be a lot better if it wasn't just so crowded, or if it wasn't so focused on just, I don't know, being kind of a mini shopping mall. I'm sure in its heyday it was really great because the terrain is really awesome and the snow is really awesome. But yeah, it's kind of hindered, and that's why it's not farther up on the list. But otherwise, Steamboat, great. And especially if you're traveling, or if you're, a family of skiers that aren't super advanced, you may like some of those amenities, and you may like how they've kind of got a lot of beginner friendly areas there. But for me, I don't know. I like Steamboat a lot, but some of that stuff kind of gets in the way, or it can kind of slow you down if you're trying to get a full day of skiing there. I know I'll get a lot of heat. Growing up in Vermont, I heard all about the amazing skiing in Colorado. It was legendary. And after skiing it, I found it to kind of be overrated. Steamboat, very good. But A Basin and those other places, I don't know, wasn't a fan. Maybe they caught me on the wrong day. This isn't as official of a list as the guy that spent a whole winter going to different areas and lived in his van and could go different days. I just went a few times, but I don't know, like Carbondale and those places, they don't impress me that much. Especially compared to Idaho, Oregon, Utah. I think the snow's better, and I think the skiing's better. Number 7 on the list, Mount Hood Ski Bowl. I know that in the video they talked about Mount Hood Meadows, and they're both very good, but from my experience, I enjoyed Mount Hood Ski Bowl a little bit more. And I believe you can access them both. There's a way to access them both. It's been a while since I've been there, but I love the Mount Hood Ski Bowl. Government camp is great. It's got these like really nice little restaurants. Oregon, that whole area has changed a lot. I have a ton of love for Mount Hood Ski Bowl. The tree skiing is really good. They have night skiing, which is really amazing. And the view when you're skiing there at night is just unbeatable. It's really a great ski area, and not a lot of people know about Mount Hood other than the summer skiing they have up at Timberline for the race camps. But I'm telling you, in the winter, they get a ton of snow, and there's some really, really good skiing at Mount Hood Ski Bowl. So that's why it takes the number 7 spot for my list. Speaking of hidden gems, this one I'm reluctant to tell you about because this is one of my favorite ski areas. It has almost no one there. It's not big, but it is a hidden gem, and if you go there on a powder day, it's some of the best skiing I've ever had. For number 8 on my list, you have Anthony Lakes in Oregon. This is really out in the middle of nowhere. It's out by La Grande. It's a tiny one-chair ski area, so if that's not your thing, it's not for you. They still sell like cheap pancake breakfast, a very mom and pop ski area. But if you go, not out of bounds, but off trail into the woods, there is some of the best snow, best powder you've ever seen, some of the best wood skiing. Anthony Lakes hardly has anyone there, so if you really like that, it's one of the best ski areas for that. Anthony Lakes is a hidden gem and one of my favorite ski areas of all time. It doesn't kind of have the vertical that some of these bigger areas have. It doesn't have some of those large open areas like somewhere like Snowbird has. But for what it has, the quality is really good. And if you're looking for a non-busy mom and pop, kind of how skiing used to be, but also great powder, Anthony Lakes is where it's at. Almost nobody goes there. I don't know anyone else who really loves Anthony Lakes because most people haven't been there. Even people who live near there haven't been there. Anthony Lakes, you can find some really beautiful like spots to stay for lodging. Anthony Lakes is one of my favorite ski areas on the West Coast, and it's definitely a hidden gem, very underrated. So again, this is kind of a hidden gem, and maybe it's not as hidden as it used to be, but for number 9, I'm gonna go with Red Lodge Mountain in Montana. I thought that was some of the best skiing that I'd seen, that was kind of tucked away. I know Bridger used to be a little bit better, and maybe I would have liked Bridger before, but Bridger has gotten very crowded over the years as people have kind of moved more into Bozeman. But I would say Red Lodge Mountain is one of my favorite ski areas. I went there while I was racing. We raced against Rocky Mountain College, and that's kind of their home mountain. But I was really impressed with Red Lodge Mountain. I felt like the mountain had a lot more diversity than you kind of see at first. Had a lot of really like nice pockets kind of hidden away, and some really, really great skiing on the backside. So my number 9 spot goes to Red Lodge Mountain. Again, I can't give you too many specifics because it's been almost a decade, but when I was there, I loved it. And again, I think it's kind of a hidden gem. And number 10 on my list is Brundage Mountain in Idaho. This is one of the ones that I almost didn't put on there because it is kind of hidden gem and it's getting busier, and it doesn't need to be busier. It's in McCall, Idaho, and it has some of the best skiing that you'll see for powder. It's located near a lake. It doesn't get too busy if you're there at the right time. If you go around Christmas, almost anything is busy. But this place rules. They get great snow, they have great backcountry. You can find untouched packs of powder, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 hours into the day. And I've skied there, skied fresh powder, had it snow throughout the day, and then found new pockets of fresh powder. Especially if you go to like Hidden Valley area, which is off trail, some really, really excellent skiing. Again, it doesn't it doesn't get kind of the recognition. I know it's starting to get popular. People are starting to move there from Seattle and places like that. But I gotta say, Brundage Mountain, as far as Idaho goes, is very overrated. But as far as what people know of the Western US, very unknown and very good skiing. And lastly, number 11, I'm just gonna do 11 so that I can give kind of this ski mountain the recognition it deserves. I think kind of, I don't know, like a consolation prize or however you want to say it, but number 11 has to go to Mount Bachelor. I love Mount Bachelor. They get really good snow when the snow is good. Obviously, sometimes it can be really like wet and crunchy or wet and like sloppy, kind of slushy snow. Not the best, but when it is good, it's really good. And the terrain is really good. The only thing that really holds Mount Bachelor back right now is I went there a few years ago and there were so many people. Bend is not big enough for that many people. I saw hundreds of Sprinter vans just parked in the parking lot and people staying there overnight. It has gotten so crowded that the things I used to enjoy about it, I just don't anymore. And I'm gonna give it to you honest. You know, there's some places in Colorado where it's the same. They've gotten so busy that it's hard to recommend them. But Mount Bachelor is not that ridiculous. and it's still really good skiing. So credit where it's due. Number 11, Mount Bachelor. So anyway, those are my top 10 ski resorts in the Western US. I'm gonna do a top 10 for the East Coast, don't worry. And I'm a lot more knowledgeable there just from being there as a kid. But that's my top 10 for the West Coast. I'm sure you guys are gonna have a lot of opinions on this, and I'm sure that there are mountains that I missed. Like, I missed the entire Tahoe area, and I know that place deserves respect, but again, I haven't skied there, so I don't wanna give you a false answer. But anyway, that's my top 10 list. Let me know what you think, and if you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. It'll help make sure you get more content like this, and otherwise, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. See you in the next one. See ya.